Chapter 1896, Not So Fast. Chapter 1896, Not So Fast. Zhao Qingfeng was dazed as he stared at Ling Han, and his expression was as strange as could be. In his memory, Ling Han's battle prowess was only at a similar level to his. It was only because Ling Han's defensive ability was slightly more powerful that he had lost during their previous battle. Apart from that, he had possessed countless opportunities to defeat Ling Han during their first battle. This time, however, the gulf between their battle prowess was astonishing. He had unleashed his pinnacle attack, yet Ling Han had blocked it with just one finger. Moreover, he was extremely calm and composed, and it was as if he were simply battling against some random dog or cat. This caused him to think of Yang Xianlu. Before Yang Xianlu had advanced to the fifth severance, he had also been as weak and fragile as could be before him. What supreme prodigy! He was nothing but an insect. Was this brat going to become the second Yang Xianlu? His mind whirred, yet the flesh on his face started to peel off bit by bit. There was no blood, and it was as if he had truly transformed into copper. However, he was decaying copper right now, and it was because of this that he was falling apart. He had unleashed his pinnacle strike just then. If he succeeded, he would ascend to a new height. If he failed, however, he would never be able to recover. The copper started to disintegrate into dust, flying into the distance with the wind. Everyone fell silent. No one could refute Zhao Qingfeng's power. He was a prodigy even more powerful than many holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier forces. Now, however, he had died, such a worthless death. Indeed, he couldn't even draw a single drop of blood from Ling Han. Zhao Qingfeng opened his mouth to speak his final words. "You're indeed very powerful. I admit my loss. However, you're definitely no match for Lord Holy Sun. I'm going to die soon, but you won't live for much longer. With your personality, you definitely won't submit to the Holy Sun. However, the Holy Sun definitely won't allow such a thing to happen." As he said this, his movements became slightly exaggerated, and this caused the surrounding wind to pick up speed. When he finished speaking, his entire body disintegrated into pieces that blew away with the wind. The life force that belonged to him vanished without a trace. There was no more Zhao Qingfeng in this world. A smile spread across Ling Han's face. Regardless of whether Zhao Qingfeng was warning him or cursing him, this didn't affect his Dao heart in the least. In a battle of equal levels, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone. So what if Yang Xianlu was powerful? He would be nothing more than a stepping stone in his path of seeking Dao. He would help Ling Han ascend to a new level. Grandmaster Zi Cheng also smiled upon seeing this. Although Zhao Qingfeng's death was a significant matter, the Eternal Prosperity sect also had to speak reason, no? Even if Yang Xianlu didn't speak reason, he was only a holy son, a mere severing mundane tier holy son. Time. What his disciple needed was time. As long as he had enough time, he would be able to peer down at the entire world. Let's continue, Alchemist Zi Cheng said. Although an unexpected interruption had occurred, this had instead helped to solidify Ling Han's position. Of course, he would definitely conduct a thorough investigation once this ceremony was over. He would find who had let Zhao Qingfeng out. Not so fast, another person suddenly shouted. Fuck. What was going on today? Why was everyone seeking to interrupt the ceremony? An old man stepped forward from the crowd of spectators. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he was radiating with a powerful aura. Lu Jin. Grandmaster Zi Cheng said with a frown. Lu Jin was a 3-star alchemist. However, he also had another identity, was an ascending origin tier elite. Thus, Lu Jin was extremely arrogant and self-important, and he didn't really listen to others. Moreover, he was indeed a talented alchemist, and he had the potential to become a 4-star alchemist. However, to suddenly step forward at this moment. This caused Alchemist Zi Cheng to become extremely displeased. He wouldn't mind using his power as chairperson to kick Lu Jin out from the ceremony. Lu Jin clasped his hands, and said, "Chairperson." His expression was haughty, and it was clear that he didn't hold much respect for Grandmaster Zi Cheng. Everyone gasped upon seeing this. Just then, Zhao Qingfeng stepping forward was already a very big issue. Now, another person in Lu Jin was stepping forward. Perhaps Alchemy City was going to experience some unexpected change. What's wrong? Alchemist Zi Cheng asked in displeasure. Lu Jin was definitely stepping forward at this moment on purpose. However, he was a 3-star alchemist, and he was more so an ascending origin tier elite, so Alchemist Zi Cheng definitely had to give him some face. I have an important matter to report, Lu Jin said loudly. His voice was like booming thunder. Under the might of an ascending origin tier elite, Ling Han's radiance was instantly swept away. What's the matter? Do you have to report it now? Alchemist Zi Cheng asked in a baleful voice. If Lu Jin couldn't give him a good reason, he would definitely give him a good beating. A smile tugged at the corners of Lu Jin's lips, and he said, because of this matter, this measly holy sun ceremony can be tossed aside. What an arrogant tone. Alchemy City had invited numerous forces to this ceremony. Not only were countless 3-star forces present, but there were also many 4-star forces present. They were all here for the Holy Sun ceremony. Yet, Lu Jin was claiming that this ceremony could be tossed aside. How preposterous. Oh! Alchemist Zi Cheng couldn't be bothered speaking any more nonsense. He looked at Lu Jin, waiting for further explanation. If Lu Jin couldn't give a good explanation, he wouldn't need to give him any more face. It's because Lu Jin pointed at himself, and his voice became countless times louder as he said, I've already advanced to become a 4-star alchemist. 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist, 4-star alchemist. His voice echoed around the plaza. Everyone was stunned upon hearing this. Only after several dozen seconds did someone finally gasp in deep astonishment. The plaza then descended into commotion. A 4-star alchemist. There were only 3 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City, and indeed, in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. To become a 4-star alchemist was equivalent to becoming a Celestial King. Just what kind of concept was Celestial King? This was indeed a significant matter. Compared to this, crowning a new holy sun was indeed a measly matter of little importance. It was far too insignificant. Just then, Grandmaster Zi Cheng could still suppress Lu Jin using his status as chairperson and a 4-star alchemist. Now, however, their status was equal. A 4-star alchemist. This status was far too transcendent. If conflict occurred among the 4-star alchemists, it was extremely likely that this would result in the fracturing of Alchemy City. This was because there were far too few 4-star alchemists. Any one of them could create a supremely powerful force. Alchemist Zi Cheng faltered for a moment. He had many things to consider. Lu Jin advancing to become a 4-star alchemist and Zhao Qingfeng suddenly advancing and stepping forward to challenge Ling Han. Right now, he could seemingly link these two matters together. This was no simple matter. However, he remained calm and composed. After living for so many billions of years, he could definitely keep his emotions under control. His voice was calm as he said, "Do you have any proof? This is a 4-star celestial pill that I just finished refining 11 days ago. You guys can appraise it." Lu Jin flicked his finger as he said this. Whoosh! A streak of white light shot toward Alchemist Chu Yi. He hadn't given it to Alchemist Zi Cheng, and he was instead giving it to Alchemist Chu Yi. There was definitely something fishy about this. Alchemist Chu Yi was currently enjoying wine from his calabash, and when the pill vial flew over, he casually reached over to catch it. A white pill vial appeared in his hand. At the same time, an expression of reluctance appeared on his face as he put his calabash down. He then opened the seal of the pill vial. This kind of celestial pill was far too valuable, and losing any iota of its aura would be a significant loss. Thus, it had to be stored in a sealed vial. Alchemist Zi Cheng and Alchemist Heavenly Heart both shuffled over to look at the vial. The surrounding spectators also stood on their tippy toes, hopeful that they could catch a glance. Wang. The alchemical pill had yet to appear, yet a streak of azure aura had already risen into the air. This aura didn't dissipate in the sky, and it instead transformed into the figure of a small fox. Its eyes were extremely large, and it was as adorable as could be. Chapter 1897, Compromise. Chapter 1897, Compromise. Solemn expressions instantly spread across the faces of Grandmaster Zi Cheng and the two other four-star alchemists. The higher the level of an alchemical pill, the more phenomena it would exhibit. In terms of four-star alchemical pills, their medicinal power transforming into the shape of a beast was an extremely normal phenomenon. No, this isn't medicinal power transforming into the shape of a beast. Rather, this is a celestial pill, Alchemist Heavenly Heart immediately said. He was a life form that had been born from a celestial pill, so he was extremely sensitive when it came to such alchemical pills. Alchemist Zi Cheng and Alchemist Chu Yi were both given a fright. A celestial pill that could exhibit the shape of a life form. This wasn't an ability possessed by four-star alchemists. Instead, this was an ability possessed by five-star alchemist. No, no, no. Even ordinary five-star alchemists couldn't achieve such a feat. Only those who had gathered countless years of experience and reached the pinnacle could achieve such a feat. How could a four-star alchemist achieve this? However, a look of disappointment quickly spread across Alchemist Heavenly Heart's face, and he said, "The medicinal power has indeed taken the shape of a beast. However, this isn't a genuine life form. Instead, it's born from some symbol that has been purposefully inscribed into the pill. It's because of this that it appears like a genuine life form." He had initially thought that he had found a life form similar to himself. However, it turned out to be nothing more than a disappointment. Grandmaster Zi Cheng reached over and channeled some kind of celestial technique. The small azure fox immediately reverted into an orb of energy. This was a celestial pill of gaseous form. "Azure cloud pill," the three alchemists exclaimed in unison as they exchanged a glance. Among four-star alchemical pills, the azure cloud pill was the easiest to refine. Thus, when trying to advance to become a four-star alchemist, most alchemists would choose to refine the azure cloud pill. However, regardless of how easy it was to refine, it was still a four-star alchemical pill. It was successfully refined less than 1 month ago. The three four-star alchemists could naturally determine this with ease. If they couldn't, they would be a failure of a four-star alchemist. It was clear that Lu Jin hadn't found this alchemical pill from some random place, and then dishonestly claimed it as his own. Alchemist Zi Cheng resealed the pill vial, and tossed it back to Lu Jin before saying, "This is indeed a four-star alchemical pill. Congratulations on becoming a four-star alchemist, Brother Lu. This is great news for Alchemy City." He laughed heartily, and said, "Today is a day of two celebrations. Not only have we gained a new four-star alchemist, but we're also gaining a new and talented holy son." His reaction was extremely quick, and he more so mentioned Lu Jin's breakthrough before Ling Han's crowning. This was because he understood that by stepping forward now, Lu Jin was definitely targeting Ling Han. Of course, to target a measly one-star alchemist and a severing mundane tier cultivator as a four-star alchemist was definitely overkill. In reality, Lu Jin was most likely targeting Alchemist Zi Cheng. At their level, conflicts would appear extremely peaceful and calm on the surface. In reality, however, there would be shadows and projections of blades flittering around everywhere. Countless people might be affected. Lu Jin waved his hand, and said, "Brother Zi Cheng, you've already been the chairperson for almost 300 billion years, right?" Thump. Alchemist Zi Cheng's heart thumped upon hearing this, and his gaze instantly became intense. "Indeed. Your memory is fairly good. According to the rules of Alchemy City, the position of chairperson needs to be changed once every 300 billion years, Lu Jin said as he continued to stare at Grandmaster Zi Cheng. "I suggest that we immediately choose a holy son to become the successor." He was forcing Alchemist Zi Cheng to abdicate. Alchemist Zi Cheng came to a sudden realization. No wonder Lu Jin had stepped forward with such conviction and resolution. As it turned out, he was targeting his position as chairperson. Such a rule did indeed exist in Alchemy City. One could only act as chairperson for 300 billion years. When the time came, they would have to abdicate and pass their position on to someone else. In reality, there were still around 250 million years until the time limit of 300 billion years. This was enough time for Alchemist Zi Cheng to nurture Ling Han. Moreover, under normal circumstances, who would dare to challenge him and force him to choose a successor? Alchemist Heavenly Heart and Alchemist Chu Yi didn't give a toss about this, so Alchemist Zi Cheng could naturally take his time to make a decision. However, Lu Jin's sudden advance to become a 4-star alchemist gave him the right to force Alchemist Zi Cheng to make a decision. Why did he insist on doing this? One had to realize that even though he had become a 4-star alchemist, his status was still far inferior to that of Alchemist Zi Cheng. That being the case, why did he insist on offending Alchemist Zi Cheng? This was because Lu Jin also had another identity, was Lu Xianming's master. As such, his actions were indeed targeted at Ling Han. However, targeting Ling Han wasn't his ultimate aim. Instead, the position of chairperson was his ultimate aim. If they were to choose a holy son to become the successor now, this would naturally have nothing to do with Ling Han. After all, without completing this ceremony, he couldn't be regarded as a holy son. That being the case, what right would he have to be considered? Taking a step back, even if Ling Han had the right to be considered, how could he surpass the other holy sons? He had only just become a 1-star alchemist, so did he even know how to perform spirit refinement? This was a vicious attack, and it was also an attack of extreme coincidence. If Lu Jin hadn't coincidentally become a 4-star alchemist at this time, his threat would have been absolutely useless. Anyhow, if one wanted to become a holy son, they would first have to receive acknowledgement from all of the 4-star alchemists. Thus, he only had to object to prevent Ling Han from becoming a holy son. At that time, Lu Xianming would have the greatest chance of becoming the successor. For the sake of his disciple, and more so for the position of chairperson, Lu Jin was truly giving it his all. I have my own plans for selecting a successor, Grandmaster Zi Cheng said with displeasure. Lu Jin had only just become a 4-star alchemist, yet Zi Cheng had already raised 3 4-star alchemists. Thus, how could Alchemist Zi Cheng pay much attention to Lu Jin? They were both 4-star alchemists, yet they were at different levels in terms of spirit refinement. Thus, the gulf between them was still extremely great. Then I resolutely object to Ling Han becoming a holy son, Lu Jin said with a shake of his head. This young man is far too good at causing trouble. Not only has he killed 2 potential successors of Celestial King tier forces, but he even forced Zhao Qingfeng to death just then, offending the Eternal Prosperity sect in the process. If we elevate him to the position of Holy Son, won't that be further provoking those Celestial Kings? This wasn't untrue. However, the matter with Zihei Bingyun and Luo Changfeng had already been almost completely resolved by Grandmaster Zi Cheng. Moreover, Zhao Qingfeng had been released by none other than Lu Jin. Now, however, he was shifting all of the blame onto Ling Han. He was truly shameless to the core. Alchemist Zi Cheng's expression darkened, and his look of displeasure became even more intense. In fact, he wasn't appointing Ling Han to the position of Holy Son out of self-interest. Otherwise, which of his 3 previous disciples hadn't had the right to become his successor? However, Lu Jin? For the sake of his disciple, he was truly stooping as low as he could and giving up all face. However, Lu Jin did indeed have a great advantage. As long as he didn't agree, Ling Han could never become a holy son. As such, the power was in his hands. As long as he remained stubborn for 300 million years, Alchemist Zi Cheng would eventually have to abdicate. At that time, it was extremely likely that Lu Xianming would become the successor. Alchemist Zi Cheng gazed at Lu Jin, and Lu Jin gazed at Alchemist Zi Cheng. Their gazes were locked, and it was as if they were silently discussing something. After a brief moment, Grandmaster Zi Cheng said, "After 3 years, we'll pick a successor from among the holy sons and holy daughters." Hearing this, Lu Jin said, "I also agree to Ling Han becoming a holy son." The 2 powerful figures each took a step back to come to a compromise. On the surface, it appeared as if Lu Jin had gained a significant advantage. After all, what could Ling Han do in a measly 3 years? Even if he stayed in a time cultivation chamber every day, that would only be 300 years. How far could he grow? Could he compete with Lu Xianming? Meanwhile, this was also the most time that Alchemist Zi Cheng could buy. If he asked for any more, he would be risking a significant increase in unpredictable variables. Anyhow, Alchemist Zi Cheng had agreed to this time limit of 3 years because he was well aware of Ling Han's comprehension ability in alchemy. Only he knew that Ling Han had already succeeded in performing spirit refinement. After 3 years, Ling Han would most likely be a 2-star alchemist already. At the same time, he might have already reached the 2nd refinement. That being the case, he could then naturally compete with the other holy sons and holy daughters. Chapter 1898 Visitor from Thundercloud Palace. Chapter 1898 Visitor from Thundercloud Palace. After the 2 big shots had reached agreement, the ceremony thus continued to proceed. Ling Han swept an eye over Lu Jin, and turned to look back at the holy sons and holy daughters that were gathered. Among them, Lu Xianming was wearing a prideful smile. Ling Han involuntarily showed a smile filled with profound meaning. Did Lu Xianming think he was a sure winner? A mere 3 years, that was indeed not enough time to change anything for others. Even in the time cultivation chamber, it would only be 300 years. Wasn't wanting to achieve a great breakthrough in alchemy in a mere 300 years just a joke? But Ling Han had the reincarnation tree, and this was a supreme treasure that was crucial in turning the circumstances around. You, a minor character, can become conceited for a while, but I will soon deal with you. Ling Han did not take it to heart. In the first place, Lu Xianming did not have a single trait that was worth his serious notice. Of course, Ling Han could not just become a holy son so easily. He had to display his skill in alchemy. Not only would he have to answer various bizarre questions from some veteran alchemists off course, they all had to deal with pharmacology, and Alchemy also had to concoct an alchemical pill in public in the end. After adequately proving his natural talent in alchemy, only then could he be considered to have passed the test, and finally begin the coronation. The process of coronation was extraordinarily solemn and dignified. Ling Han's name would be inscribed on the absolute beginning stone of Alchemy City, and when a new chairperson emerged from holy sons and holy daughters like them, the names of all others would be erased. Only one person could be listed on the name list of the generations of chairpersons, and the others would be replaced by the next generation of holy daughters and holy sons. After alchemist Zi Cheng announced that Ling Han would be the 10th holy son of this generation of Alchemy City, an immortal palace tier elite immediately moved, and began to write down Ling Han's name on the absolute beginning stone. It evolved from the Chaos Source Rock, and was incredibly hard. It was usually used to record glorious achievements. In the ancient realm, the absolute beginning stone was capable of absorbing all attacks, and only Genesis tier elites were capable of surpassing its limits and damaging it. After coming to the celestial realm, there were many more that could damage the absolute beginning stone, but it was still used for the purpose of recording events. But even for immortal palace tier, he still had to expend a great amount of effort and strength to inscribe a person's name on it word by word. Otherwise, there would not have been need for an immortal palace tier elite to move personally. This was not just a question of dignity. Hong, long, long, a loud ruckus rang out, and a hot cloud of volcanic ash surged at the horizon, and was presently surging over from afar very quickly. However, was this really volcanic ash? Why would it release a loud commotion like the earth quaking and mountains shaking? That immortal palace tier elite had been focused and concentrating on inscribing Ling Han's name initially, but with such a shock, his hand suddenly slipped, and the Ling in Ling Han's name was written at a skewed angle. Though it could still be distinguished as Ling, it was extraordinarily and incredibly hideous. This elite couldn't help but show an expression of fury. Didn't they see that he had been inscribing words? Who dared to shock him like this, and succeeded at that? Humph. Alchemist Zi Cheng involuntarily humphed loudly. He raised his head to look at the skies, and loudly called out, "Which clan is it that is so unruly? Yi, could it be that this cloud of volcanic ash is an elite?" Everyone raised their heads and looked. The progress of the cloud of volcanic ash was especially quick. In a short while, it had already surged over. Even if there was still a very far distance away, and even if there were protective formations in place, everyone still felt a frightening wave of heat assail them, and felt a burning pain. Boom, the flames dissipated, and a colossal warship appeared, rapidly shifting from a quick charge to slowing down. Finally, it remained afloat in midair. There was shockingly a symbol of lightning on this warship. Thundercloud Palace. Alchemist Zi Cheng couldn't help but humph lightly, his voice exuding a strong displeasure, while his expression became very solemn. He had already paid a personal visit to the Thundercloud Palace and Zihei clan, resolving the grudges that Ling Han had with these two forces. Though the two Celestial King tier-level forces were still very displeased with the fact that their heir had been killed in a fair battle, going by logic, they did not mobilize powerful figures to seek Ling Han out for vengeance. Since Alchemist Zi Cheng had already personally visited to make an apology, and had also given adequate compensation, and most importantly, the Rock Palace was really not easily to be trifled with, the two Celestial King tier-level forces agreed not to hunt down Ling Han further with much reluctance. In truth, if Alchemist Zi Cheng had not visited them, they would not have known that the two Ling Han were actually the same person. But now, the Thundercloud Palace had actually come. It was very coincidental. Lu Jin had just advanced to a 4-star alchemist, and almost ruined the matter of Ling Han becoming a holy son, and the Thundercloud Palace had come over now. There was definitely something off about this. Could it be that the two had colluded with one another? Alchemist Zi Cheng involuntarily glanced at Lu Jin. Lu Jin's expression was serene. Not the slightest bit of fluctuation could be seen from his expression. When one had reached this kind of cultivation level, and stood on this kind of height, they would naturally not reveal anything through their expression. Ha 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 ha, I did not miss the occasion, right? A loud holler rang out, and a burly man walked down from the skies. He traversed a few miles with every step, and in 3 or 4 steps, he had already descended onto the plaza. This naturally incited the attack of the formations in the city, but when they landed on that person, it only created a series of brilliant sparks, yet had no way at all to wound that person in the slightest. Ba Yao. Alchemist Zi Cheng's eyes tensed, showing a strong hint of wariness. Just like how there were first refinement, second refinement, fifth refinement, and seventh refinement among 4-star alchemists, it was naturally the same for cultivation. This Ba Yarrow was one of the few ascending origin tier elites of the Thundercloud Palace. When he was young, he had been a holy son, and after advancing to the ascending origin tier, he became one of the elders of the Thundercloud Palace. In the past, he was already incredibly aggressive, and defeated a great many holy sons and holy daughters of other Celestial King tier-level forces, and was recognized to have a sliver of hope of becoming a Celestial King himself. Unfortunately, tens of billions of years had passed, and he still plateaued at the ascending origin tier. However, as an ascending origin tier, he was definitely a top-tier existence in terms of battle prowess within the ascending origin tier, just like how there was 7th refinement and 8th refinement among 4-star alchemists, and had the title of being the strongest below the Celestial King tier. Of course, whether he was number 1 or not was merely the praise of some people towards him. In truth, who would know exactly how strong the strongest ascending origin tier was? Grandmaster Zi Cheng, Grandmaster Chu Yi, as well as Grandmaster Lu Jin. Ba Yarrow looked towards the 4 great alchemists, and as his eyes passed over one, he would address them. Finally, his eyes landed on Lu Jin, and he showed a smile. Both alchemists Zi Cheng and Ling Han felt a jolt in their hearts. How did this Ba Yarrow know that Lu Jin had recently become a 4-star alchemist? Clearly, they had communicated with each other since long ago. This was no cordial visitor. So this is the outrageously bold Ling Han? Ba Yarrow did not concern himself with the reactions of the 4 great alchemists, but rather looked towards Ling Han, appearing to be absolutely unrestrained. He was also qualified to do that. In terms of battle prowess, he was already one of the very best in the ascending origin tier. Furthermore, Alchemy City could not produce celestial *** that could help him advance further. Thus, since he had no requests for them, he could be forceful. He did not have to lower his voice and act humbly towards alchemists. This junior is indeed Ling Han. As for whether I am outrageously bold or otherwise, that would have to depend on whom I'm facing, Ling Han answered, neither servile nor overbearing. Gasp. Everyone was rendered speechless. This guy actually said being outrageously bold would have to depend on whom he was facing. You are already talking back to an ascending origin tier elite, and this could still not be considered as being outrageously bold? Hee hee. Ba Yarrow, on the contrary, began to laugh, and then laughed madly. All of a sudden, his laughter came to an abrupt halt as he looked at Ling Han menacingly. How dare you, violent criminal, actually kill the holy son of our sect? Though Grandmaster Zi Cheng has spoken up on your behalf, and capital punishment can be cancelled, punishment is inevitable. You, kneel. Chapter 1899 Living on Someone, while helping others secretly. Chapter 1899 Living on Someone, while helping others secretly. B.A. Yarrow looked at Ling Han, his voice harsh and severe. His black locks suddenly danced, each strand entwined with blue-colored lightning, cracking and popping loudly, incredibly powerful. Boom, the unique pressure belonging to an ascending origin tier elite attacked as if a divine dragon appeared, wherein mortals could only bow in reverence. Even alchemist Zi Cheng had not expected that B.A. Yarrow would make a move in public. Though he moved to block the assault with an angry humph, there was really a considerable gap between his strength as compared with B.A. Yarrow, so how could he make it in time? His heart grew very anxious. If a holy son was to kneel to another in public, how would he be able to face others in future? If this spread out in future, others would not be concerned with whom Ling Han had knelt down to, or why he had knelt. They would only say that Ling Han was as timid as a mouse. He was clearly in Alchemy City, and there were 4 great alchemists by his side at that, yet he still spinelessly begged for mercy from an outsider. No matter how prodigious you were, so what? You would be directly besmirched to the bone. This was too sinister. Lu Jin. Alchemist Zi Cheng thought in his heart. If this kind of thing had really happened, then he would guarantee that there was no possibility for Lu Xianming to ascend to the position. He was sure that B.A. Yarrow must have come through a collusion with Lu Jin. This was a series of moves. Using the stakes of giving his agreement on Ling Han becoming a holy son, forcing him to proclaim that the heir would be selected after 3 years, and then directly forcing Ling Han out of the running. Next, Lu Xianming would practically be sure of victory. With a master like this, it was clear what his disciple's nature was like. If Lu Xianming were to take the seat of chairperson, the atmosphere of Alchemy City would definitely be turned foul by this master and disciple in future. Boom, an indescribably terrifying chi rippled out. All severing mundane tiers in the area felt their knees become weak. In fact, some dividing soul tier elites couldn't bear it, either. B.A. Yarrow was really too powerful. The fact that he was acclaimed as the top elite of the ascending origin tier might be a little exaggerated, but his strength definitely allowed him to claim an imposing position in this cultivation level. How could Ling Han resist that? Fu Gaoyun, Fu Xiaoyun, and a few other old acquaintances all showed a hint of worry. They were standing so far, and were not the main target of attack, either, but still felt their knees become very weak. How could Ling Han possibly hold up to this? And Qianzhao clan, Beiyu clan, and other such forces all smirked coldly, wanting nothing more than for Ling Han to be utterly shamed. Now that Ling Han had ascended to become the holy son of a 4-star force, and further when Alchemy City was the strongest inheritance beneath the Celestial King tier, even if the ancestor of a 3-star force came, they would have to be polite when they met Ling Han. Naturally there was no further mention of getting vengeance, but how could enmity and animosity be so easily forgotten? Now that someone could give Ling Han a little bit of suffering, they were naturally pleased to see it happen. Amidst a furious roar, alchemist Zi Cheng finally stood in front of Ling Han, but it was already too late. What? Everyone was astonished. Ling Han was still proudly standing erect. His knees had not weakened, and he had not knelt. How is this possible? The aura of B.A. Yarrow alone was definitely capable of crushing a mere severing mundane tier with a difference of so many cultivation levels, even if you were a king among kings, or even a monarch tier. You definitely are not human. Ling Han was naturally human, but there were 2 source powers of heaven and earth inside his body, and they were essentially existences comparable to celestial kings. You, a mere ascending origin tier, actually wanted to force a celestial king to kneel. You got to be joking, right? Of course, this was because of the crucial fact that B.A. Yarrow had only used his aura. If he added a sliver of power of regulation or force, he would definitely be able to kill Ling Han a considerable number of times with a single thought. B.A. Yao, you have gone too far. Grandmaster Chu Yi declared coldly. Though Ling Han was not his disciple, he was the holy son of Alchemy City. For an outsider to make a move on Ling Han, it was no different than making a move on Alchemy City directly. This naturally had exceeded Grandmaster Chu Yi's limits. Yet Ba Yarrow was completely indifferent. He was too powerful. Even if all the ascending origin tiers in Alchemy City joined forces, he could still leave calmly. Furthermore, just with the fact that he was from Thundercloud Palace, what did these people dare to do? At worst, they could only banish him from the city. Brat, there seems to be something in your body. He fixed his gaze on Ling Han, his eyes growing slightly brighter. When one had reached the cultivation level he had reached, there were practically not many secrets that could be hidden from him. If it was claimed that Ling Han could resist his aura with his own effort, there was no way he would believe that. And what object could block his pressure? It was definitely a precious treasure that was at least Celestial King tier level. What business is it of yours? Ling Han declared coldly. This person actually dared to make a move on him, being extremely shameless. He naturally couldn't be bothered to address the other party as senior again. Humph, to be so rude even to an ascending origin tier elite. With your character, how can you become a holy son of Alchemy City? Lu Jin suddenly spoke up, his expression filled with disdain. You old bastard, have you gone blind? Didn't he see that it was Ba Yarrow who made the first move so completely shamelessly? And now he actually said he was being rude. Ling Han felt rage fill his heart, and couldn't help but mockingly say, Grandmaster Lu, could it be that you share the same pants with this demon? The two of you are a truly loving couple, with such good marital harmony. Pu, hearing these words, a considerable number of people spluttered into laughter, and felt this was completely unimaginable. Ling Han was really awesome. In terms of cultivation, he was only a mere 4th severance, yet had offended a king tier of the ascending origin tier. In alchemy, he had just become a 1-star alchemist, yet dared to insult a 4-star alchemist right to his face. They had never seen someone as willful as he. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was worried to death, while the empress was proud. This was what her husband should be like, mighty and bowing to no one. Bewitching maiden Ru also felt very captivated, her eyes glowing. No matter how strong a woman was, she would have heroic dreams, hoping to encounter a man with a metal that rose above the heavens. At least in this moment, Ling Han had deeply touched her heart. Ba Yarrow actually was not angered. He only looked at Ling Han smilingly, the light in his eyes slightly frightening, yet Lu Jin was almost half dead with fury. He had just become a 4-star alchemist, filled with high spirits, yet a minor alchemist had actually rained down insults on him. This, how could he not be furious? You are courting death, he yelled, even his voice a little high-pitched. What is it? Can't you be insulted? Alchemist Zi Cheng's face was filled with thunderous fury. Who do you think you are? Think you can fly just because others give you some face? So what if you are a 4-star alchemist? You aren't even worthy of picking up my shoes. If it was not for taking the big picture into consideration, you wouldn't be even worthy of acting proud in front of me, and you actually dared to threaten me? This bastard, I have tolerated you for very long. Lu Jin couldn't speak coherently with how furious he was. Though Ling Han's words were hurtful, he was only a holy son, after all, and did not have much weight to his words, but it was a different case for alchemist Zi Cheng. However, he had not exaggerated. The 3 disciples of Grandmaster Zi Cheng that had been cast out were all 4-star alchemists. Who could compare to that accomplishment? Previously, Lu Jin could use the matter of Ling Han ascending to become a holy son to restrain alchemist Zi Cheng and force him to compromise, but he could not do so now. To establish a holy son, the agreement of all the 4-star alchemists had to be attained, but to depose a holy son, that was similarly the case. He no longer had the stakes to threaten alchemist Zi Cheng. As an alchemist of Alchemy City, you live in the city, yet help outsiders in secret, being even less than a dog. Grandmaster Zi Cheng berated to his heart's content, making Lu Jin's face pale as well. The damage caused by these words was extraordinarily serious. If Lu Jin could not wash this blight from his name, then the label of a traitor would be forever stuck on him. I make the suggestion for this person to be banished. Grandmaster Zi Cheng pointed at Lu Jin, his expression sinister. Previously, he had borne with it, all because he was taking the big picture of Alchemy City into consideration. A 4-star alchemist indeed had strong influence, but for his own selfish desires, he actually colluded with an outsider to bully one of his own. That had surpassed Grandmaster Zi Cheng's limits of toleration. You think I do not dare to make a move on you, or I can't? How naive. Chapter 1900 An Aggressive Counter. Chapter 1900 An Aggressive Counter. Don't even think about it. Completely flustered, Lu Jin suddenly jumped up, pointing a finger at Grandmaster Zi Cheng. If he really was exiled from Alchemy City, that would become an eternal stain that would never be washed away. He would be jeered and laughed at wherever he went. Alchemist Zi Cheng ignored him completely, and only looked towards Grandmaster Chu Yi and Grandmaster Wen Tian. What do the two of you say? His expression was filled with austere ice, his air overbearing, having an indescribable domineering aura. Who said that he was only versed in alchemy? Everyone was overwhelmed by Grandmaster Zi Cheng's aura, and felt their hearts tremble as their scalps grew numb. Grandmaster Zi Cheng was really bold to proclaim discarding a 4-star alchemist just like that. It should be known that on the surface, there were only 4 4-star alchemists in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm, and every one of them was an influential supreme existence that could affect a whole region. Brother Zi Cheng, you are the chairperson of Alchemy City, so it is natural that whatever you say goes. Grandmaster Chu Yi took a sip of wine, appearing to be very unperturbed. However, he added, Alchemy City has always had only 3 4-star alchemists, and that was fine. What he implied was agreement. Having us 3 4-star alchemists was enough, and there was no need for a treacherous guy like this. Grandmaster Wen Tian, meanwhile, was expressionless. He was an unusual character, and thought about things in a way different from the norm. He replied, agreed. Aside from new alchemical pills, there were not many matters that could capture his interest. Whether there was another 4-star alchemist or one less, so what? He did not care. Hearing the verbal exchange between these three, everyone felt their mouths twitch, unable to believe what they were hearing. A 4-star alchemist had actually been discharged with just a few words like that. This was practically like it was just a trifling matter. Scram. Grandmaster Zi Cheng pointed at Lu Jin. This time, he was really angered. To actually dare have ideas about his own disciple. It caused this old geezer's temper to completely explode. You cannot exile me. I am a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin's face was completely pale as he loudly called out, you are using your public office to avenge a private grudge. I do not yield. I don't yield. I won't yield. So what if you won't yield? Grandmaster Zi Cheng scoffed. So what if I am using my public office to avenge a private grudge? He countered with 2 consecutive questions, striking Lu Jin speechless, making his face astonishingly pallid. Grandmaster Zi Cheng's status in alchemy was really too high. In the past, even a minor alchemy apprentice of his had been able to rampage around in Alchemy City without any reservation, not taking even a 3-star alchemist seriously. Then, Grandmaster Zi Cheng was naturally even more powerful. Merely in the case of 4-star alchemists, he had nurtured 3 of them. What kind of accomplishment was that? In the world of alchemy, Grandmaster Zi Cheng was a massive tree that stretched up to the heavens. If it was not for the fact that he lacked a bit of luck, he could even have a chance of becoming a 5-star alchemist. Hehe, I have to say a word of justice here. B.A. Yarrow interrupted. The Thundercloud Palace had a secret deal with Lu Jin. The Thundercloud Palace would fully assist Lu Jin's branch to ascend to the position of chairperson of Alchemy City, and as repayment, Alchemy City would provide the Thundercloud Palace with a great volume of alchemical pills for free or a very favorable price every year. As for dealing with Ling Han, that was only something to be done while they were at it, just a minor suppression. Who would have expected that this suppression would actually incite such a strong backlash from Grandmaster Zi Cheng? How could a noble 4-star alchemist be discharged so easily? B.A. Yarrow asked solemnly. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to speak here? Alchemist Zi Cheng immediately pointed a finger at B.A. Yarrow, his contempt indescribable. Who was Zi Cheng? As the king of 4-star alchemists, from a certain aspect, he could be considered a celestial king himself. No matter how invincible you, Ba Yarrow, are in the ascending origin tier, can you be considered a celestial king? You can't. Then shut your mouth. What right do you have to interrupt me? Scram! Alchemist Zi Cheng shouted. Ling Han's heart rippled. So as it turned out, this master might be a money grubber, but beneath that, he had hidden such a domineering facet to his character. It was just that he usually had no need to be so overbearing that he could override everything. And now that he had been angered, he had finally exploded. He was also very touched. Grandmaster Zi Cheng had risen in fury because of him. Otherwise, Ba Yarrow was ultimately a member of a celestial king tier level sect, and he himself was an ascending origin tier elite, so how could he be easily insulted? Ba Yarrow's expression turned cold, and he declared, Grandmaster Zi Cheng, please be more polite with your word. I will allow you 3 breaths' time to scram. Otherwise, I will spare no expense to rally all the elites in this world to begin hunting you down, right until you are dead. Grandmaster Zi Cheng declared menacingly. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. When these words were spoken, Ba Yarrow's aura was suddenly completely suppressed. Invincible in the ascending origin tier? Hehe, that was just empty words. Among ascending origin tier level forces, a king tier of the ascending origin tier like him was indeed capable of being invincible, but the Thundercloud Palace was not the only celestial king tier level force in this world. How could it be that the other celestial king tier level sects did not have holy sons and holy daughters of the last generation who had cultivated to the ascending origin tier, and could not break through even with much effort, but had tempered their power to become incredibly strong in the ascending origin tier? A 4-star alchemist sparing no expense definitely could take out something that would tempt these elites out, and by then, he would really be in danger. The Thundercloud Palace was only a 1st Heaven Celestial King tier level force, and the Eastern Celestial Realm had 2nd Heaven and 3rd Heaven, 4th Heaven, and even 8th Heaven Celestial King tier level forces. So what if he was killed? How could it be that the Thundercloud Celestial King would seek them out for revenge? Just like with that person from the Rock Palace. So what if you were a person that had walked out from the Thundercloud Palace and Zihei clan, you would still be directly killed without hesitation. As long as your background was powerful enough, you could be confident enough. When you made a move, you would definitely not be merciful in the slightest. 1. Grandmaster Zi Cheng began counting down, his gaze sinister. 2. Ba Yarrow's expression changed drastically. Ultimately, he did not dare take a gamble on Grandmaster Zi Cheng's determination. With a humph and a leap, he had already flown back to the warship in the skies. Grandmaster Zi Cheng did not cast him a second look, and turned to look at Lu Jin. You can get lost too. No, you can't do this, I am a 4-star alchemist, I am a 4-star alchemist. Lu Jin shouted loudly, slightly hysterical. With a wave of his sleeve, Grandmaster Zi Cheng said, Brother Ji Yu, Brother Chang, Brother Zhao, cast this person out. Immediately, 3 ascending origin tier elites walked out. Aside from alchemists, there were similarly cultivators as well in Alchemy City. They were the pillars of strength that truly protected Alchemy City. As for alchemists, they would definitely be spending the majority of their time on alchemy. Brother Lu, please, these 3 people said to Lu Jin, their faces expressionless. When Lu Jin saw this, he knew that there was no turning back in this matter. His hands involuntarily balled into fists, and his heart was filled with regret. Why didn't he quit while he was ahead? Previously, he completely had the upper hand, yet had greedily attempted to follow up and press his attack home. In the end, a heavy blow landed right on top of him. Not only had he lost all his advantageous position, he had in fact lost completely. Only now did he know just how far the gap was between himself and Grandmaster Zi Cheng. He could not become his equal just by being a 4-star alchemist like him. How regretful he was of his past deed. He sighed, turned, and left. His posture was stooped and filled with a despondent air, a completely different picture from how high-spirited he had once been. Everyone gasped in shock. Everything had changed really too quickly. At the beginning, merely Lu Jin alone had forced Grandmaster Zi Cheng into a continuous retreat, compelling him to make various compromises. In the end, a strong helper like Ba Yarrow had come, yet it had instead blown the bugle horn for the beginning of Grandmaster Zicheng's counterattack. This was probably what they called life being inconstant and prone to change. Grandmaster Zicheng swept an eye over the gathered holy sons and holy daughters, and saw Lu Xianming was presently trembling in fear. He calmly said, 3 years later, the selection for the heir will continue as planned. Chapter 1901, Practicing Hard. Chapter 1901, Practicing Hard. What? Everyone was baffled, and could not understand. Why? Previously Grandmaster Zicheng had clearly been compelled to compromise, and agreed to hold the selection for heir 3 years later, but now Lu Jin was clearly dealt with, and added with Grandmaster Zicheng's present domineering attitude, even if he declared that Ling Han was to directly ascend to the position, there were probably not many people that dared to raise objections. Even if he did not do that, he could make some changes, and push this time limit backwards, such as 10,000 years, or 100,000 years later. For the others, this time was not long, yet it could allow Ling Han enough time to develop and grow. Why was he still maintaining the original decision? This was the difference between Grandmaster Zicheng and Lu Jin. He would keep his word. Everyone was filled with admiration towards Grandmaster Zicheng. It was no wonder he could sit in the position of chairperson for so long. Everyone admired him, and merely from this aspect, even Lu Jin had no hope of catching up to him. Ling Han looked towards Grandmaster Zicheng, and saw that the old geezer bore a mysterious smile on his face. He knew that this was Grandmaster Zicheng adding pressure and motivation onto his shoulders. But everyone had an overly perfect view of Grandmaster Zicheng. Ling Han could easily guess. If he still had not reached the height of Lu Xianming and the others after 3 years, Alchemist Zicheng would indeed begin the selection for the heir. However, this selection could last for 1 or 2 years, and could also last for 8 to 10 years, or even a few million years. Who said that he had to decide instantly when he made the selection? He had been alive for billions of years, so how crafty and wily was he? No, how astute and circumspect was he? Lu Xianming sighed in relief. He had been worried that he, too, would face accounting, but unexpectedly not only was he safe, the selection for heir 3 years later would still progress as planned. He definitely, absolutely would defeat everyone else 3 years later, and return in boundless glory. As for now, he just had to keep a low profile. Even if someone stepped on his face, he could not react. He could not allow others to capture the slightest bit of chance to deal with him to avoid losing the right to contest. Yet he had thought too much. Whether it was Alchemist Zicheng or Ling Han, they had never taken him to heart before. Continue. Grandmaster Zicheng waved a hand, and sat back down. He closed his eyes like he was a weary old man. But who would dare to underestimate him? He had sent a king tier of ascending origin tier away, and exiled a 4-star alchemist. Just how domineering without compare was this? The ceremony began. One after another, the representatives of 3-star forces and 4-star forces took their turns to approach to express their congratulations for Ling Han, as well as offer heavy gifts at first. There were not so many, but seeing how Grandmaster Zicheng doted on Ling Han, they added a considerable number at the last moment. Ling Han was not reserved, and accepted all he was given. The more, the better. This caused Grandmaster Zicheng, who occasionally swept a glance over him, to feel incredibly gratified. His little disciple really had his bearing, valuing wealth as much as his own life. Good, very good. First, it was 4-star forces, and they were followed by 3-star forces. Those like the representatives of Lunar Sect and Beiyu clan all offered their congratulations, and gave rich gifts to Ling Han, but the expressions on their faces were naturally incredibly awkward. To deliver gifts and congratulate their enemy, and they had to be all smiles at that. This really made them feel awkward. But what could be done? He was the holy son of a 4-star force, and he could simply send out any ascending origin tier elite, and that would be enough to conquer them. Their only hope was that Ling Han could forget past events. You guys can prepare some more godly metal. I am a very forgetful person, Ling Han said, smiling slightly. The representative of the Lunar Sect and the others were all dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually blackmail them in public? Thankfully. As long as you were willing to demand benefits, grudges were easily resolved. Furthermore, godly metal wasn't anything too valuable. Pseudo-divine metal was truly priceless, and divine metal was really exorbitant. There were not even many celestial kings that could take that out. The status of the Fu clan was comparatively too low. Their turn came at the very end, and only then were they allowed to offer their congratulations. Holy Sun Ling, congratulations. Fu Gaoyun bowed deeply, his heart feeling incredibly rueful. Ling Han was really too amazing. Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyun looked dejected. When Ling Han and the Fu clan had turned hostile, it was already determined that there was absolutely no possibility for anything to develop between them. Ling Han deliberately conversed a while longer with Fu Gaoyun, giving him enough face. As expected, when Fu Gaoyun stepped back, a considerable number of people gathered around and asked him all sorts of questions. They were all probing into his relations with Ling Han. Being able to become a friend of this popular holy son, he was naturally worth enticing. In this way, it should be practically a sure thing that Fu Gaoyun would inherit the position of clan leader for the Fu clan in future. To friends, Ling Han had always been selfless. If he could help them, he would do all he could. Sichu Xiaozhen walked over, her expression filled with strong curiosity. You're $1. Stop. Ling Han hurriedly interrupted her. I'm perfectly fine, and there is no need for you to worry about me. Che, being so secretive, you must be guilty of something. Sichu Xiaozhen mumbled, yet Sichu Tang pulled her to one side. Xiong Yang also gave Ling Han a few words of encouragement. In the past, he had thought highly of Ling Han, but never could have imagined that Ling Han could become the holy son of Alchemy City one day, which made him feel very rueful. The ceremony lasted for 3 days, and Ling Han was tired from receiving the many gifts he had been given. After this ended, Ling Han immediately had the divine demon sword swallow all the godly metal. Unfortunately, it was still not enough to push the divine demon sword into the level of 4-star pseudo-divine metal. He and the Empress both began their seclusion. They all had the same goal, and that was to reach the peak stage of 4th severance first, and then break through to the 5th severance. Furthermore, Ling Han had another task, and that was to become a 2-star alchemist within 3 years, and try as hard as he could to reach 3rd refinement in his spirit refinement. In that way, he would not be the slightest bit inferior to the other holy sons and holy daughters anymore, and it would be clear whose spirit refinement had higher standards by then. Ling Han first entered into the Black Tower, and began comprehending the 2-star pill recipe underneath the reincarnation tree. This had taken him 30,000 years, and then he entered into the time cultivation chamber to proceed on concocting alchemical pills. Occasionally, he would ask for guidance from alchemist Zi Cheng, and because his improvement was rapid, Grandmaster Zi Cheng would treat him with care every time. This little disciple of his really could possibly become a 2-star alchemist 3 years later. Then, he would not need to play any more tricks. He really could immediately select the heir, while he himself could retreat in peace, where he could concoct alchemical pills and teach disciples. That was right. He would have to let his little disciple have a few more children. He wanted to develop even more outstanding alchemists. Taking advantage of the fact that Ling Han was in seclusion, he began to choose a consort for Ling Han. She definitely had to have a certain skill at alchemy. In this way, with the combination of the bloodlines of both father and mother, only would it be possible to have children that surpassed their parents. Ling Han naturally knew nothing of this. Otherwise, it was possible that he would flee out of Alchemy City. Inside the Black Tower, time flew by underneath the reincarnation tree. When 2.5 years had passed in the outside world, Ling Han finally succeeded, and concocted his first 2-star celestial pill. After informing Grandmaster Zi Cheng, he did not stop, and immediately began his spirit refinement. 2nd refinement, this was the target that he had to reach. He did not neglect his cultivation, either. Grandmaster Zi Cheng was incredibly concerned about this little disciple of his, and bombarded him with cultivation resources like they were worth nothing. He did not use the resources of Alchemy City. The majority of it came from Grandmaster Zi Cheng's own private pocket. It should be known that Grandmaster Zi Cheng really had a good acumen for making money. As he was a 4-star grandmaster, added with the accumulation of wealth over so many years, his wealth was unimaginable. And this had pushed Ling Han all the way to 4th Severance late stage. The Empress had reached the 4th Severance peak stage because she only had to focus on cultivation, but to break through to the 5th Severance was not something possible by just working hard on cultivation. A turning point was needed. And right at this time, a messenger arrived at Alchemy City. Chapter 1902, Yang Xianlu's Invitation. Chapter 1902, Yang Xianlu's Invitation. This messenger came from the Eternal Prosperity Sect. When he came, it just happened to be the time that Ling Han would come out of seclusion after 3 days, which could be considered very coincidental. Because the name of the Eternal Prosperity Sect was too famous, this messenger was allocated to stay 3 days on the 4th level. The moment Ling Han came out of seclusion, someone immediately went to inform him, and Ling Han temporarily had no plans of beginning the next step of seclusion, though he really couldn't be bothered to meet anyone at this time. After a while, a young man appeared. He was dressed in black robes, and was in the 4th Severance, possessing a forceful heroic spirit. He was just a messenger, yet had the bearing of a king tier, which was proof of what kind of talent was under the command of Yang Xianlu. You really are putting on airs, actually making me wait for 3 days. When this black-robed young man spotted Ling Han, he immediately showed an expression of displeasure. Heh! Ling Han mocked in his heart, and pointed at the doors as he said, "The doors are there. You can get lost now." The young man faltered involuntarily. He had not thought that Ling Han would be so direct and domineering. His face flushed red, and turned green in the next instant. After a while, he finally said, "Ling Han, I have come under the command of the Lord Holy Sun." "Oh, which Holy Sun?" Ling Han asked indifferently. "Of course it is Holy Sun Yang Xianlu," the young man declared proudly. "Aside from my lord, who else in the Eternal Prosperity Sect is worthy of the title of Holy Sun?" This boast was quite exaggerated, but it was also proof of how powerful Yang Xianlu was, as he actually didn't even have a single rival. "What is Yang Xianlu looking for me for?" Ling Han crossed his legs, as if he had not heard clearly the words Yang Xianlu. The young man inhaled sharply, and stared fixedly at Ling Han, looking stunned. "How outrageously bold are you to actually dare call Yang Xianlu's name directly?" He couldn't help but rebuke, "How dare you? How can the Holy Sun's name be called out directly by someone like you?" Ling Han sneered, and said, "You came to my territory, and are planning to teach me how to behave." The young man had a slight desire to make a move, but when he thought of Ling Han's grand feats in the past, he immediately dispensed with the thought. He was indeed a king tier, but compared to Zhao Qingfeng, he was inferior by who knew how much, and even Zhao Qingfeng had been killed by Ling Han, so what was he worth then? If he made a move, that would only be delivering his head up on a silver platter. "Humph, when you see my lord, you will know just how big the gap is between you and Lord Holy Sun," the young man said proudly. He took out a letter, and flicked it over to Ling Han. "My lord invites you for a meeting." Ling Han took the letter, but did not immediately open it. A year later, the gathering of prodigies at Broken Clouds Mountain, the young man said, his expression filled with arrogance. "Ling Han, do you know that all those that could be invited by my lord are holy sons of celestial king tier level sects? You are the only exception. The details of the time and venue are all written in the letter, but first you have to be able to see it." He paused, and then continued, "This is written personally by my lord." Written personally by Yang Xianlu? At first, Ling Han was unconcerned, but now he was interested, and began to open the letter. There was a seal on top, representing that the envelope was untouched. When this seal was broken open, a frighteningly sharp chi was transmitted from within the envelope, as if it was capable of slicing the heavens apart. So powerful. Ling Han's heart clenched. When Yang Xianlu wrote, he had to have left his martial intent on the letter, and now the details of the time and venue were all in the letter. Only those who could see it could set out there. This was a test. "I, Yang Xianlu, had already invited you, but were you worthy of coming?" Wang, a boundless majestic light surged out, and the house was immediately filled with patterns of great Tao, as if a supreme elite was about to charge out of the letter, and give Ling Han a fatal strike. A solemn expression spread across Ling Han's face, but the movements of his hands did not stop in the slightest as he continued to open the letter. That young man, though, could no longer bear it. He retreated continuously, and a sliver of admiration spread across his expression. Ling Han, who was bearing the brunt of it, looked completely fine, while he retreated continuously. It was clear how wide the gap was between the two of them. No wonder he could kill Zhao Qingfeng, and managed to be personally invited by the Holy Sun. However, you have only opened the envelope, and have not yet unfolded the letter. That is the true test. He watched quietly from the sidelines, and saw that Ling Han had already drawn out the letter that was inside. It had been folded 4 times over, and was quite thin. Ling Han continued to open the letter. Wang, a golden light surged out, turning into a golden divine sword that struck out at Ling Han, and Ling Han casually extinguished it with a squeeze of his hand. He opened it again, and a green-colored precious saber slashed out. He lowered his hand again, and the precious saber dispersed from his strike. At this time, the letter was completely unfolded. Wang, an endless black halo surged out, turning into a fist filled with disdain for the whole world that struck out at Ling Han. One punch could shatter the heavens, suppress eternity, and dictate over the universe. Domineering and extremely proud. This was Yang Xianlu's Tao, exuding endlessly with his conviction. Ling Han also shot out a punch. This was an unusual contest between the two of them. He could not depend on treasures like the divine demon sword, or he would fall into a disadvantage, and it would also cause his ambition for invincibility to waver. Peng! The two fists clashed. Ling Han's figure trembled slightly. He took 3 steps back, stopped, and then took another 7 steps back before he finally steadied his footing. And there were 10 footprints as deep as half a foot left clearly on the tiles beneath his feet. That black fist also shattered abruptly, and turned back into a black halo, which then formed words, 3 Yang Peak, when the 3 stars align. These words only appeared for an instant before shattering abruptly, and turning into nothing. Ling Han, the letter was already delivered. I will take my leave now, the young man said, a hint of admiration in his expression. To be able to sustain a strike from Lord Holy Sun, this strength was truly powerful. Of course, compared with Lord Holy Sun, he wasn't even worthy of picking up his shoes. It should be known that when the Holy Sun wrote the letter, it had only been done carelessly, and Ling Han had still taken 10 steps back, using his full effort. The comparison in strength could not be any clearer. Ling Han ignored him. He looked at that letter. Because Yang Xianlu's martial intent had already seeped out completely, the letter had also become completely blank. If he could not sustain that punch, he would only see a blank letter. This was also where Yang Xianlu was domineering. I would invite you, but were you worthy? A calm smile appeared on Ling Han's face, while the fighting spirit in his eyes blazed. To be honest, he was indeed no match for Yang Xianlu at present. Merely from that punch previously, he already knew that Yang Xianlu had definitely advanced into the 5th severance. Otherwise, he could not have that kind of power that could crush everything. If this was not just a letter that just bore a sliver of Yang Xianlu's martial intent, but was rather a direct punch, then Ling Han would at least be throwing up a mouthful of blood. There is another year. I must break through to 5th severance, Ling Han mumbled. He had already decided that he would go. Perhaps Yang Xianlu can give me enough pressure, allowing me to gain an opportunity to push open the doors to the 5th severance. The heavenly Tao Jade was not all purpose. It only increased that slight sliver of hope for him. The crux of the matter was still on him. However, the priority now is to attain 2nd refinement. Half a year later, I will really be put to the test. Yang Xianlu's matter should be set aside first. Ling Han rubbed his chin, feeling that his time had really been filled to the brim, and there was not enough to use at all. Chapter 1903 Selection begins. Chapter 1903 Selection begins. Ling Han continued his path of alchemy. His talent in alchemy was truly astonishing, and added with the fact that he had this kind of source power of wood like the reincarnation tree, he could have a few hundred times more time for appreciation as compared to others. A mere 5 months had passed, and he had already reached 2nd refinement. The quality of this 2nd refinement of mine should be good enough. Ling Han looked at the celestial pill that he had just concocted in his hand, a smile appearing on his face. 2 golden lines, one deeper and the other lighter, possessing an imposing air that could not be described. As his abilities in alchemy advanced into the level of a 2-star alchemist and second refinement, his skill in first refinement also greatly improved. Though he still could not compare to alchemist Zi Cheng, the gap between them would not be astonishingly huge. It should be known that Grandmaster Zi Cheng was a 4-star alchemist as well as in 7th refinement. This had to be credited to the effort that Ling Han had made in his first refinement, as he had strengthened his foundations to an incredibly sturdy extent, and also because he possessed his own method of spirit refinement that had leapt out of alchemist Zi Cheng's circle. From the very beginning, alchemist Zi Cheng would only explain the basic principles of spirit refinement to Ling Han, and not the detailed method. He had had the latter ponder it himself. Though this had caused Ling Han to spend a very long time on the first refinement, it was completely worth it. Ling Han broke into a smile, slightly proud of himself. However, the second refinement is already so difficult, so the 9th refinement would be unimaginably hard. Though he had reached second refinement so quickly, the further you went, the harder spirit refinement would be. Hence, third refinement and fourth refinement was the limit for most alchemists. Only those who had attained fifth refinement would be called grandmasters. Ling Han went into seclusion again to fully stabilize his capacity at second refinement. And at the same time, the agreed time of 3 years that alchemist Zi Cheng had spoken of was also getting nearer and nearer. All the holy sons and holy daughters were all rolling up their sleeves, eagerly waiting for this day to come. Initially, Lu Xianming had the highest chance because his natural talent in alchemy was indeed slightly superior to the rest's. However, he had the same weakness as Ling Han, and that was that his time for growth was not long enough. If he was given another 1 or 200 million years of time, then Lu Xianming would be able to gain enough of an advantage, but in a mere 3 years, he could not draw a clear distance between himself and the other holy sons and holy daughters. Thus, it was not just Lu Xianming that was holding his breath this time. It was the same for the others. Who would emerge as the final victor was still uncertain. On this day, Ling Han was still concocting alchemical pills, but he was interrupted. As it turned out, the time had arrived. The 10 holy sons and holy daughters had all been summoned to the alchemist pavilion to undergo the final selection for the heir. Perhaps there would be no more holy sons and holy daughters in Alchemy City after today, only the future chairperson. Ling Han exited alone. Though he was living in the alchemist pavilion itself was very, very colossal. He had still walked a very far distance before he finally arrived at Qingyang Pavilion. This was where Alchemy City would discuss major events. The 10 holy sons and holy daughters were all standing in the hall, waiting for what could possibly be the most important turn of fate of their lives. At this time, even the most subtle among them looked excited. This step could possibly head to heaven, but also could possibly lead to hell. Ex-holy sons and ex-holy daughters were not important. Yet Ling Han was extremely calm. Firstly, he had enough confidence, and secondly, even if he could not become the chairperson of Alchemy City, he would not be too concerned, either, because what he needed was just strength in both alchemy and cultivation. If he could become the chairperson of Alchemy City, the benefit was that it would be able to provide him with more cultivation resources, but it was just that. Alchemist Zi Cheng saw this, and involuntarily smiled. This disciple of his really had the bearing of a general. Just look, others were almost killed by their anxiety, and only he was as steady as a mountain. With this comparison, Ling Han immediately stood out. In the hall, alchemists were gathered, but Alchemist Chu Yi and Alchemist Heavenly Heart, the 2 4-star alchemists, were absent. With their personalities, they would not be concerned about who would become the chairperson of Alchemy City. It was fine as long as he did not squander the wealth of his ancestors to nothing. And precisely because of this, they had supported alchemist Zi Cheng's move to banish Lu Jin. Who asked you to collude with outsiders? Competition was fine, but betrayal was definitely not permitted. There were many 3-star alchemists, and they sat down in rows all around the hall. As for 2-star alchemists and 1-star alchemists, they did not qualify to sit down, and could only stand. Their numbers were naturally even higher. As far as the eye could see, there were people all around. Alchemist Zi Cheng calmly announced, "Today is the day to select the future chairperson of Alchemy City, and among the 10 of you, one person will bear the heavy responsibility of leading our city in future. However, others cannot slack off, either. You all are also the pillars of support for our city, and the city will ultimately have to depend on you in the future." "Yes, Lord Chairperson." The 10 holy sons and holy daughters all obeyed solemnly. The rules are very simple. You have to concoct a 2-star alchemical pill, at least with second refinement. A 3-star alchemical pill or a spirit refinement higher than second refinement will get additional marks. The concoction of the alchemical pill and quality of spirit refinement will also affect the final mark. Additionally, if the cultivation time in alchemy is extremely short, there will also be additional marks awarded. These final words were clearly prepared for Ling Han. Though Lu Xianming, too, had not immersed himself for a very long time in alchemy, and could also get additional marks, he definitely was far from being compared to Ling Han. Alchemist Zi Cheng glanced at the 10 people, and then waved his hand. "Begin." He already knew Ling Han's abilities in alchemy, and thus was not bothered to set a few stages to make his decision. He might as well directly select his heir. Ling Han and the others entered into an alchemy chamber respectively. They were not restricted to concocting a specific alchemical pill, and were also allowed to fail, but the total time given was only slightly more than 3 months added with time acceleration. It was only 1 day's time in real time. The results would be clear a day later. Ling Han was not concerned with how the others would do. He was just like how he usually was, beginning his concoction step by step. In another alchemy chamber, Lu Xianming was filled with confidence. In a mere 3 years' time, even if the time cultivation chamber was taken into account, it was only 300 years. He did not believe that others could gain any massive improvement in this time, but he was different. In terms of strength in alchemy, he was not much inferior to the other holy sons and holy daughters in the first place, but if his cultivation time was taken into account as well, the additional credit would be enough to compensate for his shortcoming in alchemy. Most importantly, he had also obtained a piece of scarce earth essence. If it was used during spirit refinement, it could greatly increase the quality of spirit refinement. Similarly, conducting second refinement, if the final alchemical pill had the same number of stars, and the spirit refinement grade was also the same, then his advantage of being young would be reflected. The choice was based on potential in alchemist, and not absolute strength. Otherwise, what 3-star alchemist here was not stronger than them? Another who was also filled with confidence like Lu Xianming was Qin Guyu. Though she did not have scarce earth essence, she was a dividing soul tier, and the rarest trait of hers was that when she advanced into yang soul tier, the divided soul that she had gotten possessed attributes of both water and wood. This was extremely rare. If she was purely only a cultivator, then getting this divided soul meant that she was a weakling in battle, but for an alchemist, this was a precious treasure. This was her trump card. It had never been known by others, and that even included her master. Possessing this kind of divided soul, she had an affinity with the essence of plants, and for alchemy, this kind of effect was incredibly amazing. Thus, she had the confidence that she could concoct a supreme celestial pill. The effect of spirit refinement was also to increase the grade of the alchemical pill. If she could concoct the alchemical pill to a supreme grade right at the very first step, then even if the effects of her spirit refinement were slightly weaker, she would still be able to emerge as champion. Chapter 1904, Giving Up. Chapter 1904, Giving Up. There was another person filled with confidence, and that was Oyu Khan. He did not have any essence, or any plant-aligned divided soul, but his skill in alchemy was indeed the most outstanding of all the holy sons and holy daughters. Though they were similarly 2-star alchemists, and similarly could only reach second refinement, the grade of his completed pill could reach high grade, surpassing the starting point of medium grade and low grade of the others, and in terms of spirit refinement, his standard of first refinement had gained the praise of all alchemists. Every round of spirit refinement was extremely important. It did not mean that second refinement was more important just because it was harder than first refinement. That was not the case. Every instance of spirit refinement was increasing the grade of the celestial pill. Every time was of utmost importance. It was just that after the first spirit refinement, it was as if the alchemical pill had also gained immunity, which led to the increase in difficulty of spirit refinement. With just his first refinement, he was worthy enough to look down on 99% of all alchemists. Otherwise, how could he be able to become a holy son? And now these 10 people here each had to have their respective strengths. After all, holy daughters and holy sons represented the prestige of a force. In the alchemy chamber, the 10 of them first concocted celestial pills. Some were delighted, while some were distressed because they did not bear up to the pressure, and the grade of the alchemical pill that they had concocted was too poor. Originally, they could have reached medium grade, and now it had actually fallen down to low grade. Among them, Oyu Khan was naturally the proudest of himself. The alchemical pill in his hands had reached high grade, which corresponded to his abilities. He had not performed below standard due to pressure. The position of future chairperson is definitely in the bag, he said at a volume that only he could hear. Ling Han, Lu Xianming, just you two wait, when I am promoted, that will be the day the two of you die. Compared to concocting alchemical pills, the time taken for spirit refinement would be much shorter. If one did not fail, half a day's time was enough, and second refinement would only need the short time of just a day. Thus, for those whose alchemical pill had not reached their expected grade, they began their second refinement. The time of slightly over 3 months was enough for everyone to concoct their pills 3 times. Additionally, spirit refinement only needed to fail, and it would mean the alchemical pill was worthless. Thus, even for those who had concocted alchemical pills that were ideal, they would have to concoct a few more in response to the possibility of failure of spirit refinement. However, they were not in a rush. They completely could concoct pills, spirit refine, and decide whether to continue concocting the next cauldron of alchemical pills based on the circumstances. A month later, Oyu Khan was the first to end his test. He pushed open the doors of the alchemy chamber and walked out, his face wearing an incredibly confident smile. For the pill that he had concocted, the basic grade was high grade, and had undergone 2 times of spirit refinement. Its first refinement was perfect, and second refinement was ordinary. Altogether, this result was a great breakthrough. Hence, that was why he was so filled with confidence. After merely a while, Lu Xianming also pushed open the doors and walked out similarly filled with confidence, his hand bearing an alchemical pill. The starting point of the alchemical pill he had concocted was medium grade, but because it had merged with the scarce earth essence, it had reached perfection after 2 rounds of spirit refinement. This was more or less the same result as Oyu Khan's, but his advantage was that he was younger. If their results were the same, it would naturally be him winning. Another while later, Qin Guyu also came out. Her expression was filled with weariness, but her eyes were extremely bright. She was holding a celestial pill in her hand, and she had sealed the aura of the alchemical pill with her own cultivation so that it did not seep out, and did not show the alchemical pill to others. She wanted to astound everyone instantly. None of them were anxious, and all were filled with self-confidence as they turned to look towards the remaining 7 alchemy chambers. These were alchemy chambers that were deliberately used for observation and competition. Thus, the walls on all 4 sides were transparent to viewers on the outside, yet those inside could not see what was outside. In this way, those outside could observe, while at the same time those that were inside could focus without distraction. What is he doing? Someone suddenly pointed to the alchemy chamber that Ling Han was in, his expression incredibly astonished. That was because after Ling Han had concocted an alchemical pill, he actually looked it over, gave a few sniffs, and then directly squeezed it to nothing. This definitely could not be a failed pill. Firstly, if the pill concoction had failed, there could not possibly have been an alchemical pill left behind, and secondly, from the color and luster of this alchemical pill, it had to have reached the extent of medium grade at least, and Ling Han actually destroyed it. What did that mean? Everyone heard him, and turned to look in that direction. They were all extremely stunned, and did not understand what Ling Han was playing at. Were you giving up? Humph. Lu Xianming, Qin Guyu, and Oyu Khan all looked cold. This brat was indeed incapable. It had only been a mere 3 years, so what heights could he actually manage to reach? The pill concocted had to be a 1-star alchemical pill, and that was why he had directly destroyed it to avoid being embarrassed. Then why had he still come then? What a joke, such a huge ruckus had been caused previously, so if he cowered now, how would he be able to face others in future? Thus, he pretended to concoct an alchemical pill. In any case, he was in a separate room, so everyone could only see if he had successfully concocted an alchemical pill or not, but had no idea exactly what kind of alchemical pill he had concocted. Thus, he could completely use something inferior to pull a bluff over their eyes. There was absolutely no need to treat him as a worthy rival. Aside from Ling Han, the other 6 people did not immediately come out, either. Instead, after they had completed their pill, they began concocting the second alchemical pill, hoping to concoct a better alchemical pill, and improve their spirit refinement so that their results could be improved. Another month later, another 3 holy sons pushed open the doors and exited, and now there were only 4 people left that were still continuing to concoct alchemical pills. Unexpectedly, Ling Han concocted his second cauldron of celestial pill, and then destroyed it himself again. As expected, what this guy had concocted had to be a 1-star alchemical pill, and that was why he did not dare to show the alchemical pill he had concocted to others at all. Not only Lu Xianming and the others had this kind of thought, even the many alchemists gathered here thought the same. Only alchemist Zi Cheng showed a hint of admiration. He naturally knew of Ling Han's strength in making alchemical pills. The alchemical pill that he had concocted the first 2 times definitely had to reach 2 stars, and the latest grade was definitely better than the last, so why had he destroyed it then? This was Ling Han giving himself pressure, forcing himself to make a breakthrough in a very short amount of time. For the third cauldron, he not only had to succeed, but the grade of the completed pill had to further improve as well. Harsh, he was really harsh on himself. Alchemist Zi Cheng really admired this disciple of his too much. Even if others were going to concoct 3 cauldrons, the completed pill of the last 2 cauldrons would definitely not be discarded, either. Instead, they would choose the best out of the 3 cauldrons. As for Ling Han, he had forced himself into dire straits, but at the same time, this was also proof of Ling Han's strong self-confidence. He would definitely produce better results from this third cauldron. Only one that had this kind of self-confidence and determination was worthy of being his disciple and ascending to the pinnacle of alchemy. Alchemist Zi Cheng stroked his beard and smiled slightly. Even if Ling Han had really failed, he would think of some way to resolve this issue. So what? I am that shameless. If you can, come and bite me. Lu Xianming and the others were even more contemptuous. It had been a mere 3 years, and there was indeed no need to take Ling Han seriously as a rival. They had really thought too highly of this person. Ling Han thought of nothing else, and focused completely on alchemy. At present, his spirit was in a kind of incredibly subtle condition, close to being ethereal. This filled him with confidence. Every cauldron of alchemical pill he concocted would be better than the last. When he concocted his third cauldron, he had the urge to destroy it and concoct another cauldron again, but he suddenly recalled with a shiver that this was a test, and he could not afford to be rash anymore. He quickly stopped, and began spirit refinement. There were a total of 3 completed pills in this cauldron. After Ling Han's first refinement, he shook his head, and directly tossed the alchemical pill. Then, he drew out the second one and continued spirit refinement, but in the end, he had still thrown it away. There was only the last one left. Chapter 1905 Exit. Chapter 1905 Exit. Ling Han was the type that would be more motivated the more pressure he was under. Only the last alchemical pill was left. He instead broke out into a smile, a completely calm expression appearing on his face. As his hands moved, he began. Outside, aside from Ling Han, the other 9 people had all completed their pill concoction and spirit refinement, and there was only a slight bit of time left before the deadline of 1 day. However, in the alchemy chamber, because of the effects of time acceleration, it was enough to allow Ling Han to complete 2 times of spirit refinement. Everyone's eyes were drawn over. Just playing up the show. Lu Xianming's expression was filled with disdain. Ling Han's first 2 times of spirit refinement were only limited to first refinement, and then he had thrown the alchemical pill away. What did this mean? It had to be that he could only accomplish first refinement, and that was why he had deliberately thrown them away to conceal the fact that his abilities were inadequate. Right. This guy had merely used 4 to 5 years' time to accomplish first refinement, and this was extremely amazing, but the problem here was that the starting point of the test was 2-star alchemical pill and second refinement. Then, no matter how perfect your first refinement was, or how little time you had spent on alchemy, so what? This was also the reason why Lu Jin wanted to make an agreement of 3 years with alchemist Zi Cheng. That was because no matter how freakishly prodigious Ling Han was, he could not possibly attain second refinement in such a short amount of time. Even alchemist Zi Cheng was slightly nervous. Ling Han really did not have the slightest way out now. He would have to succeed or die trying. The more he cared, the more worried he was. If it was he himself that was concocting an alchemical pill, he would instead be more confident, but now he was so nervous that there was sweat on the palms of his hands. This little disciple was really capable of making things exciting. First refinement complete. A smile spread across Ling Han's face. In the recent half a year, he had been increasing his skill at first refinement gradually to a perfect level. Furthermore, it was established on his own method. This was astonishing as it meant that it was possible that he could create a system of spirit refinement that was solely his. At first, there were still some minor flaws, but after the last few imperfect spirit refinements, and under massive pressure, he had successfully completed the promotion. First refinement, perfect. Let's begin second refinement. Ling Han flicked his hand, and the celestial pill immediately danced. Multiple flashes of fire flew out from his palm, turning into many strings that interwove together behind the celestial pill like a spider's web. Ling Han was extremely focused. He had forgotten that this was a test, and was only purely refining this alchemical pill. Ethereal, natural, and close to great Tao. After they saw this scene, a great many alchemists were moved with shock. This kind of state was extremely hard to come by, and could enable the alchemical pill produced to reach a higher level than usual, as if the heaven and earth itself was providing aid. In that case, great Tao would naturally be extracted easily, interweaving and resonating with the medicinal effects. Gods, in such a heavily pressured atmosphere like a test, this brat was actually still capable of entering into an ethereal state. Fuck. They really didn't know whether to say this brat had zero interest in fame and profit, or was born just for alchemy. This was really fuckstar. The expressions of Lu Xianming and the others changed drastically. Ling Han could actually accomplish second refinement. This was the second refinement. That was no joke. How could that be? Merely 3 years had passed, and it might be that he had not attained even first refinement, so how could he do second refinement? But facts spoke louder than words. They were rendered completely speechless. They only hoped that the grade of the alchemical pill that Ling Han had concocted was not too high, and the standard of his second refinement was not much, either. I think, just based on the fact that Holy Sun Ling could enter into an ethereal state under such conditions, he is worthy of becoming the chairperson of Alchemy City, someone suddenly spoke up. That's right. This is really too rare. A considerable number of others expressed their agreement. That is inappropriate. Naturally, there would be others raising an objection. A test is a test. What could be accomplished without rules? That's right. Don't tell me that he would not be able to shine in Alchemy City without becoming chairperson. This opinion also gained the support of quite a number of people. The people on both sides broke into an argument. Though neither side could convince the other for the moment, it still caused Lu Xianming and the others to pale in shock. There had never been a case like this. The test had not ended, and about half the number already had someone that they supported. It should be known that there was still alchemist Zi Cheng behind Ling Han, and he only had to say something at this point to support Ling Han, and then that definitely was enough to make the final decision. Fortunately, alchemist Zi Cheng was expressionless all this while, and did not say anything. He was filled with confidence in Ling Han, and was completely disdainful of using this kind of little tricks. Of course, if Ling Han really failed in his spirit refinement, He would not mind using his influence to change the views of some people. Don't tell him that the strength of the disciple that he had taught still had to be doubted. Inside the alchemy chamber, a day's time passed quietly. Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed. Boom, the 9 heavens flame surged, wrapping around the celestial pill. The flames were ferocious, as if they were about to turn the celestial pill into ash. Right at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved again, and Shenyin's source water was channeled. Fire and water were incompatible, and the might of the 9 heavens flame was immediately restrained. With ice and fire on either side, the interweaving of extreme cold and extreme heat could create an amazing change. This was Ling Han's understanding of alchemy and pharmacology. Boom, the ice and fire surged, and then peace was restored. Ling Han's brow wrinkled in a frown. He felt a kind of urge to destroy this alchemical pill. It was actually just a little bit away from being absolutely perfect. He had at first thought both times of spirit refinement could be perfect, which made him feel that it was a great pity, and he wanted nothing more than to begin concocting another cauldron. He failed. Lu Xianming and the others thought. No, 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 no. If he had failed, the alchemical pill would have been destroyed. This was spirit refinement. It had to be that the quality of spirit refinement was not good enough, and that was why he had such a sour expression. The other 9 holy sons and holy daughter slightly steadied their emotions. The failure this time had to be capable of dealing a heavy blow to Ling Han's popularity. Subsequently, Ling Han also pushed open the doors and exited. Alchemist Zi Cheng opened his mouth and said, "Since everyone is done, we will begin assessing the grade of the alchemical pills." He paused, and then called out a few names. Luo Ying, Zi Gong, Gong Tian, the 10 of you are in charge of the examination. Yes. 10 alchemists walked out, and they were all 3-star alchemists. After gradually assigning pills, they stood in front of a holy son or holy daughter each, and then began their examination together. The time for pill concoction was very long, but examination would only need a short while, what more when these 10 people were all 3-star alchemists. But there were serious implications involved in the selection of the future chairperson of Alchemy City, so they repeatedly examined a few times over before coming to a final conclusion. Report the results according to the order in which they came out, Grandmaster Zi Cheng said calmly. Holy Son Ou Khan has concocted a Blue Peak Spirit Transformation Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is medium, and the grade of the completed pill is high grade. First refinement is perfect, and the second refinement is ordinary, a 3-star alchemist immediately reported. Grandmaster Zi Cheng nodded, and said, "Then we'll use this result as the basis, and determine it as 10 marks, to be subtracted or added for subsequent grading." Agreed. All the alchemists nodded. Since there was comparison to be done, there definitely had to be material for reference. Holy Son Lu Xianming has concocted the Jade Bone Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is below average. The grade of the completed pill is medium grade. First refinement is perfect, and second refinement is also perfect, the second alchemist announced. Grandmaster Zi Cheng paused slightly, and said, "The difficulty level and the grade of the completed pill are both a bit low, but the 2 times of spirit refinement are both perfect. Furthermore, Lu Xianming has stepped into the path of alchemy for but 200 million years, which is extra credit, and the final mark is 11 marks. Any objections?" Ou Khan's expression paled abruptly. He had not thought he would have lost so quickly. Agreed. All the alchemists nodded. Alchemist Zi Cheng did not deliberately suppress Lu Xianming just because he was Lu Jin's disciple. He really was a person of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Yet Ling Han snickered internally. What noble character and unquestionable integrity did this master of his have? He was just certain that Ling Han would win, and had thus deliberately done this. Since he could win himself some popularity, why not? Wily fox, oh, no, very astute and deep foresight. Chapter 1906, Ling Han ascends to the apex. Chapter 1906, Ling Han ascends to the apex. Holy daughter Qin Guyu has concocted Earth Replenishment Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high. The grade of the completed pill is peak grade, and first refinement is ordinary, second refinement is ordinary, the third alchemist reported. As his words fell, a commotion rose up among the crowds. For a 2-star alchemist to concoct an alchemical pill of high difficulty, and still actually manage to reach the extent of peak grade, this was too exaggerated. Astonishing, too astonishing. Even Grandmaster Zi Cheng showed an expression of appreciation, and said to Qin Guyu, "You have advanced into dividing soul tier 300,000 years ago. Could it be that your first divided soul is an embodiment of one of the 5 elements of heaven and earth?" As expected of a Grandmaster alchemist. He had immediately guessed the reason, but as for the exact elemental alignment, even he could not possibly make an accurate judgment. "Yes." Qin Guyu immediately replied respectfully. "My young soul is the essence of water and wood." Essence of water and wood. Everyone showed expressions of envy. This kind of young soul definitely did not have the slightest benefit for battle or cultivation, but for alchemists, it was like a precious gift bestowed by the gods. Only a fire and wood divided soul, or earth and wood divided soul could match that. This definitely could greatly add extra credit for her. Grandmaster Zi Cheng paused slightly, and then said, "Comprehensive mark is 11. Qin Guyu was slightly disappointed, but now she shared first place with Lu Xianming, and had surpassed Oyu Khan. Then, she really didn't have any other rivals. In the future, it would be a contest between only her and Lu Xianming. And she was a water and wood dividing soul tier. As her cultivation level increased, the benefits of that in alchemy would gradually be exhibited, and she would become even more brilliant and dazzling. Lu Xianming was definitely no match for her. Oyu Khan was even more disappointed. He knew that the position of chairperson was already incredibly far from him. All of a sudden, he was completely disheartened, and collapsed on the ground, not knowing what kind of expression he should wear. The 4th place, the 5th place, and the 6th place, the 10 alchemists all reported the grade of the alchemical pill they had respectively examined, while Grandmaster Zi Cheng gave a grade. He showed no bias to anyone, winning everyone's respect. Finally, it was Ling Han's turn. Holy Sun Ling Han has concocted Heavenly Flame Pill. Among 2-star alchemical pills, the difficulty level is high. The grade of the completed pill is high grade. The first refinement is perfect, second refinement is perfect, the 10th alchemist announced. "What?" Everyone erupted in uproar. Though the alchemical pill that Ling Han had concocted was slightly inferior to Qin Guyu's, it had also reached high grade, and added with his age in alchemy, that definitely could compensate for the gap between the two of them. In fact, he could even surpass her. And his 2 times of spirit refinement were actually both perfect. Hiss. That was not right. Weren't you just frowning? Didn't you mess up? Grandmaster Zi Cheng couldn't help but smile, and seeing doubtful expressions appear on quite a number of faces, he said, "The 10 of you can all come and examine." The other 9 3-star alchemists hurriedly gathered round. They could not believe that if they did not personally see it with their own eyes. But not a while later, all of them looked stunned, and felt a kind of reverence for a prodigy, even if Ling Han's present skill of alchemy was inferior to theirs. First refinement is perfect and flawless, but there is a slight flaw with the second refinement, though it can still be considered perfect. The 10 alchemists discussed for a while, and announced the final conclusion. They did not mention the grade of the completed pill, so they had to be certain about it. I don't believe it," Lu Xianming called out in spite of himself. There was no need for Grandmaster Zi Cheng to give a grade. Everyone knew that Ling Han had already won, and furthermore, he had not surpassed the other holy sons and holy daughters by just a bit, either. Humph, this is the conclusion of all 10 of us. How could you be allowed to doubt us? A 3-star alchemist said without being the slightest bit polite. Just how many 4-star alchemists were there? Though Lu Xianming was a holy son, his future accomplishment should only be limited to being a 3-star alchemist, and added with the fact that he was only a 2-star alchemist at present, what right did he have to doubt the united conclusion of 10 3-star alchemists? You're not convinced? Get lost, there is no need for you to be convinced. Grandmaster Zi Cheng nodded, and said, I give Ling Han 15 marks. Does anyone object? Everyone exchanged looks. They all thought that it was absolute that Ling Han had surpassed Lu Xianming and Qin Guyu, but it was not to the high extent of 15 marks. 12 to 13 marks should be just about it. But it did not affect the result in any case, so what need was there to dampen Grandmaster Zi Cheng's spirits? It was his disciple, after all, so it was understandable that he wanted to lift him up to a higher position. Unfortunately, they did not truly understand. Grandmaster Zi Cheng had given Ling Han 15 marks not because he wanted to deliberately raise Ling Han higher, but because he had taken the method of spirit refinement that Ling Han had invented into account. Just for that alone, it was definitely reasonable to add another 2 or 3 marks. No matter what, Ling Han had won with a completely undisputed advantage. Let me announce that the future chairperson of Alchemy City will be Ling Han, Grandmaster Zi Cheng said, his voice rolling out like thunder, ringing out through every corner of all 5 levels of Alchemy City. 300 million years later, I will leave my office, and Ling Han will inherit. Yes. In the hall, everyone bowed low. The replacement of the older generation with the new generation had been successfully completed, and Ling Han's potential also made everyone believe that this boy would definitely be able to become a 4-star alchemist in the future, and might in fact even surpass Grandmaster Zi Cheng. Even if he could not become a 5-star alchemist, perhaps he could reach 8th refinement in spirit refinement. Everyone left in turns, and both Qin Guyu and Lu Xianming stared at Ling Han venomously. If it were not for Ling Han's sudden rise to power, they would have had a chance to become the chairperson of Alchemy City. But this step could either be to heaven, or to hell. Congratulations, Holy Son Ling. The other Holy Sons and Holy Daughters all came over to express their congratulations. They knew that they would be living in Ling Han's shadow in the future. Unless they were willing to leave Alchemy City, they would definitely have to bow their heads in front of Ling Han. Ling Han nodded at everyone with a slight smile. In the first place, he was a very magnanimous person. Holy Son Ling, Ouyou Khan also walked over. Though his face was still indescribably pale, he still congratulated Ling Han. When it came down to it, this result was something that he could better accept because he had already been struck heavily in the very beginning, but in a surprising turn of events, neither Lu Xianming nor Qin Guyu managed to be promoted to the position, which made him feel considerably better. Ling Han looked at him smilingly. In the beginning, Ouyou Khan was very arrogant. He had wanted to recruit him, and when he had not succeeded, he had threatened him, and had even come up with malicious ideas against him. All the events of yesterday should be buried yesterday. From today onwards, I am willing to follow Holy Son Ling, and exert effort for the growth of Alchemy City. Ouyou Khan knelt on a single knee as he announced his loyalty to Ling Han. Was it true surrender, or a deliberate move to get nearer to him for the sake of a conspiracy? A confident smile spread across Ling Han's face. He had the generous spirit that could accommodate everyone in this world. However, if anyone wanted to stay by his side and still bear disloyalty, then don't blame him for being cruel and merciless as he erased all of them. Good, then let's work together. Ling Han helped Ouyou Khan up, and Ouyou Khan smiled. It seemed as if the grudges between them had all died out with this smile, but whether Ouyou Khan had truly been sincere, it was up to time to decide. One might know a person for a very long time, but still not understand his true character after all. Subsequently, there would naturally be a celebration hosted in the city. They did not invite outsiders this time round. It would have to wait for another 300 million years later when alchemist Zi Cheng left his office, and Ling Han succeeded his position. Then they would definitely invite the whole world. That was something for the future. 5 days later, the craze dissipated, and Ling Han began preparations to set out for his meeting with Yang Xianlu. Chapter 1907, The Place of Achieving Tao of Celestial King Tier. Chapter 1907, The Place of Achieving Tao of Celestial King Tier. Ling Han was a very restless person. He had a very strong interest in alchemy, but was also very interested in cultivation. For the time being, the problem was that he had encountered a great dilemma in cultivation. Fifth severance was definitely not something attained through thinking hard. Yang Xianlu had invited all the prodigies of the world so they could study cultivation together. There was definitely no shortage of top-tier prodigies among them. If he could spar with these people, Ling Han was sure that it should be of great help to his breaking through to the fifth severance. Furthermore, Yang Xianlu was definitely a fifth severance. If he could spar with him head-on, it would definitely help him to analyze the profound mysteries of fifth severance. Thus, he was definitely going to keep this appointment. At present, alchemy was only his interest, and cultivation was what truly determined his fate. He had not forgotten small towers and the large black dog's worries about the future. In the future, there would be frighteningly powerful enemies. To say nothing of standing against them, just to know who this powerful enemy was, he still had to reach Celestial King tier first. When a holy son, and furthermore, one that was to be the future chairperson, set out, it naturally was not something casual. Grandmaster Zi Cheng had initially wanted to send out a warship for Ling Han, but was met with refusal from Ling Han. The warship was too huge a target. Even if it was of 4-star level and could suppress all immortal palace tiers, the result was extremely hard to determine against ascending origin tier. Furthermore, there were Celestial King tiers among the people that Ling Han had offended. What if the Thundercloud Celestial King or Purple River Celestial King made a move on Ling Han on a sudden whim? It was best to keep a lower profile. Furthermore, without any attendants or any warship, Ling Han could enter into the Black Tower whenever he liked. He did not need to hide from anyone. Lord Holy Sun, can you take me with you so I can gain some experience? Bewitching Maiden Ru approached, her face bearing a fawning smile. Ling Han was becoming better and better as time passed. Furthermore, he was a sure bet to become the future chairperson of Alchemy City. This position was too important, and he could just about decide the flow of alchemical pills in the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. Hence, she definitely had to cling on tight to Ling Han. Whether the Purity sect would be able to keep the structure of a 3-star force in the future and reach 4 stars was all dependent on her now. Ling Han put on a fake smile. This bewitching maiden's smile was too false. He could tell with a single glance that she was just doing it for show. Please, aren't you begging me now? Fine then. As long as you attend my husband's bed tonight, we'll bring you along, the Empress interrupted. Sister, you are teasing me again. By now, bewitching Maiden Ru had also gained some strength to resist in front of the Empress. In front of sister's exquisite beauty, I feel inferior. How could I dare to claim a connection with Lord Holy Sun? Heh. The Empress smirked coldly, gripped bewitching Maiden Ru's chin, and said, you either obediently become a member of the Ling clan, or stop thinking of any other ideas. Sister. Bewitching Maiden Ru put on a display of being pitiful. The Empress was unmoved. It was useless to be pretentious in front of her. Aside from Ling Han, she cared nothing for anyone in this world. Wasn't it a joke to want to gain her sympathy? Bewitching Maiden Ru, having courted a rebuff, could only develop sisterly relations with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and it was unknown what trick she had played, but she actually really had the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden treat her like a sister, and she also managed to shamelessly follow the three of them. You see, I only wish to stay together with my dear sister. Ling Han and his group left very quietly. Perhaps Lu Xianming and Qin Guyu were not willing to resign themselves to reality. They only had to send out some information that Ling Han had left Alchemy City, and there would definitely be a great many people that wished to take Ling Han's life. For example, B.A. Yao. He could tell that Ling Han had hidden some kind of treasure, and definitely would not be willing to give up easily. Inside Alchemy City, there was still Grandmaster Zi Cheng suppressing him, but if Ling Han was left alone, who else would be able to intimidate him? And there was also the old demon Bloodshadow. He had initially planned to wait 10 million years, but who would have imagined that Ling Han would only need a mere 5 years' time to become the future chairperson of Alchemy City? He definitely would come to seek Ling Han out, and demand the natural peach seal. It could not be helped. Who asked that Ling Han's present strength to be too low? Grandmaster Zi Cheng had advised Ling Han before to obediently stay in Alchemy City as he was sure that no one would dare make a move on him here, but how could Ling Han possibly obey? The reason he had stepped on the path of cultivation was so he could grasp his own fate. How could he be willing to hide in a single place and be protected by others? The four of them left Alchemy City quietly, heading all the way to Broken Clouds Mountain. Their destination was 180,000 miles away from Alchemy City. It was of course impossible that Ling Han and his group would be walking there on foot. Very quickly, they boarded a massive ship to travel on it. Broken Clouds Mountain was in the territory of the Eternal Prosperity Sect, and not only was the Eternal Prosperity Sect a Celestial King tier-level great sect, the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King himself was a frightening existence of 8th Heaven Celestial King tier. The territory under the reign of the Eternal Prosperity Sect was astonishingly colossal. To say nothing of this trip needing a very long period of time, even if they had entered into the Eternal Prosperity Sect, the trip to Broken Clouds Mountain would also need a considerably large amount of time. The celestial realm was too huge, and celestial beings had unlimited lifespan, so there would not be anyone grumbling about wasting so much time on traveling. 4 months later, Ling Han and his group finally entered into the territory of the Eternal Prosperity Sect. They did not immediately disembark from the ship, but rather traveled another 12+ days, and then disembarked. At this time, there was only about a 7 days trip by foot to Broken Clouds Mountain. This time naturally pertained to severing mundane tiers. Dividing soul tier elites naturally did not need such a long time. The Eternal Prosperity Sect, prosperous for all ages. The Eternal Prosperity Celestial King was a supreme elite that had already existed since at least an epoch ago. Wherever his name had spread, it was completely peaceful. In this vast area, there was not a single criminal or mountain bandit. A single thought from a Celestial King, and he could send out doppelgangers of his divine sense in various places all around the world. Below Celestial King tier, there was no one that could match him. Hence, this area was naturally completely clean and crime-free. Here, there were extraordinarily beautiful mountains and rivers that could be seen everywhere. Some peaks were floating in midair due to some mysterious force, and they were indescribably majestic. There was no difference of night and day in the celestial realm, but the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King had used a powerful technique to create a sun, differentiating day and night. Just like his great name, wherever the sun shone, his power could reach. A few days later, Ling Han and his group arrived at a massive range of mountains. And this was Broken Clouds Mountain. It had the word broken in its name, not because this was a low mountain range, or they had broken in half, but rather because they were too tall, so tall that they had broken the clouds in the skies, and that was why they were called Broken Clouds Mountains. There were about 100 such peaks, and the one that Ling Han and his group wanted to go to was Three Yang Peak. Three Yang Peak was not the highest mountain peak in the Broken Clouds Mountains, but was the most famous. That was because this was where the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King had taken the last step and become a Celestial King. It had an unmatched historical significance. When a Celestial King was born, he naturally left behind his immortal aura here. If one comprehended Tao here, he might not be enlightened and achieve Tao himself, but there still had to be some benefits. But the Eternal Prosperity Sect did not establish this place as private property, forbidding outsiders from entering. On the other hand, everyone could come here, but the prerequisite was that they would have to be worthy of ascending the mountain. Where a Celestial King achieved Tao, it was inevitable that it would affect the channeling of heaven and earth. Three Yang Peak was naturally not a peak that everyone could climb. It was said that only true king tiers could be worthy of getting approval from heaven and earth, and ascend this holy land of achieving Tao. Ling Han had found out this information in a city before entering into the mountains, and couldn't help but feel very interested. The place where a Celestial King had achieved Tao, what kind of amazing traits would it have? Chapter 1908, At the Foot of the Mountain. Chapter 1908, At the Foot of the Mountain. There was already not much time left until the agreed time with Yang Xianlu. Ling Han hurried, and continued to increase his abilities in alchemy. In cultivation, he had already reached the 4th Severance Peak stage, and there was no further possibility that he could improve any further. Neither he nor the Empress had refined the heavenly Tao Jade, but they were instead waiting for an opportunity. For example, when they were fighting with first-rate prodigies, and could directly feel the aura of a 5th Severance, then if they were to refine the heavenly Tao jade at that moment, they perhaps might be able to succeed in one go. Other mountain rocks could attack jade, so Ling Han lingered on alchemy. Perhaps he could gain a breakthrough in alchemy, and while he was at it, open the doors to the next stage in his cultivation. Bewitching Maiden Rue was very expectant. The circles that she mixed around in were initially only the holy daughters and holy sons of 3-star forces, and now not only had she advanced to the level of 5-star forces, she could get an invitation from Yang Xianlu, even. There was definitely not any air of any random celestial king tier sect that was worthy of that. It definitely had to be top-notch emperor tiers, stronger than even Zhao Qingfeng. Otherwise, they would only be worthy of becoming his subordinates. How could they be worthy of becoming his esteemed guests? Yang Xianlu, exactly what kind of prodigy is he? Both Ling Han and the Empress were very curious. Ever since they entered into the Eternal Prosperity sect, there was talk everywhere about the legend of Yang Xianlu, and it was like he was a second Eternal Prosperity Celestial King. No one doubted that Yang Xianlu could become a Celestial King, and everyone was rather wondering exactly what heights he would be able to attain in future. 5th heaven, 7th heaven, 8th heaven, or even 9th heaven. At the foot of Three Yang Peak, people gradually came, but not a single person climbed the mountain. Because there was not a single person that could ascend. Ling Han had tried previously. He, too, could not ascend. There was a supreme pressure, and even the 9 heavens flame and Shenyang source water could not resist it. That was because this was not purely pressure, but also contained the martial intent of a supreme elite. To say the least, even if it was just pure pressure, it had originated from an 8th heaven celestial king, and even the source power of heaven and earth was only celestial king tier level, but there were still 9 heavens in celestial king tier. Perhaps it could only be comparable to the 1st heaven, or possibly 9th heaven. The possibility that it could resist an 8th heaven celestial king was extremely low. How was he going to go up then? Even these 2 source powers of heaven and earth were completely helpless. Then, even if Yang Xianlu was at 5th severance, Ling Han did not believe that the former could set foot. Perhaps this place could not be entered at any time, but rather one had to wait for the time that it opened like some kind of mystery realm. The day the Eternal Prosperity Celestial King achieved Tao. It should be this one day, and that was why Yang Xianlu had said when the 3 stars aligned. There were more and more people coming, and they all waited at the side. Some indeed attempted to ascend the mountain, but they were very soon defeated with flushed faces and ears. In the face of celestial king tier level pressure, no matter what kind of supreme prodigy you were, you could only feel powerless and incompetent. The Empress and Bewitching Maiden Rue drew looks. There was no need to mention Bewitching Maiden Rue. She was born delicate and extremely lovely. Though she was not *****, her index of attraction was still off the charts. The Empress still kept a very low profile, and wore a piece of white muslin on her pretty face, covering her exquisite beauty. However, her perfect figure and incomparable bearing could not be concealed in any form or manner. Her attraction was definitely not inferior to Bewitching Maiden Rue's. Since they had the free time now, a great many people began to admire these 2 women. Some were more reserved, while some were incredibly direct. They were just looking boldly, completely unrestrained in their attention. Looking was a right that belonged to everyone, but just staring straight on like that, was that appropriate? Ling Han strode forwards and arrived in front of a man. "Hey, you're blocking me." This was a young man with a large, tall build. He had a head of dark blue hair, and there were 2 horns on his head that were similarly exuding a dark blue light. Ling Han frowned, and said, "If you keep staring at someone like that, it is very impolite." "Ha ha." The blue-haired youth hollered in laughter, then looked at Ling Han, and said, "Ugly, have you heard the saying that only heroes are worthy of beauties?" "Oh, are you a hero?" Ling Han asked evenly. "That's right. I, Zhu Xuega, am the strongest prodigy in this world." The blue-haired youth stuck out a finger and tapped his chest. "Hihi, how boastful of you." Ling Han had not said anything when he heard someone else interrupt coldly. Among those who were invited here, which of them was not a supreme prodigy? It should be known that even Zhao Qingfeng was only Yang Xianlu's subordinate, and was not worthy of becoming his guest. For this kind of emperor tier, or in fact monarch tier, who would yield to another? And who the hell are you? Zhu Shuiger turned around, shouting at that person, his tone very unfriendly. This young man who had interfered proudly declared, Liu Feizhang, never heard of you. Zhu Shuiger snorted. Then now you know, and you will remember it for the rest of your life because I am the person that will bestow terrible defeat on you. Liu Feizhang moved aggressively, stretching out his left hand, which turned into a gigantic golden beast's claw, clawing out at Zhu Shuiger. Haha, you are asking for your own humiliation here. Zhu Shuiger did not cower in the slightest. With him brandishing both arms, a dark blue ocean appeared, and there was the sound of massive waves crashing against the coast, greeting the incoming attack with earth-shattering power. Boom! The two young prodigies broke into a great battle. Both of them were outstanding characters in the Severing Mundane tier, and even if neither of them had reached 5th Severance, they had traveled a very far distance in the empty vacuum between Severing Mundane tier and Dividing Soul tier, so their battle prowess was incredibly astonishing. Ling Han was shocked. Why had someone stolen his business? He rubbed his chin. Could it be that he really had a halo of bad luck? Otherwise, why had everything been all well just now, but when he had just spoken a few words, there would be someone coming to blows fiercely? Though he was very restless, and very much wanted to make a move, he had been concocting alchemical pills over these 3 years, and did not have a chance to move at all, after Alhi was disdainful of joining forces with another, and besides, he could not bring himself to make a move on Liu Feizhang, so he could only step back in great disappointment. Yo, does Lord Holy Sun want to fly into a rage for the sake of his lover? Bewitching Maiden Ru laughed lightly, covering her mouth with a hand. Her beautiful figure shook seductively, and was incredibly captivating. Unfortunately, someone has snatched your business from you. Do you believe that I will spank you? Ling Han threatened. Could you bring yourself to? Bewitching Maiden Ru looked at him plaintively, looking very pitiful. Pretender. Ling Han sneered, and said, Bewitching Maiden, don't lose your own measure in your joy. If I go all the way with you, and just leave without a word, whom would you be making your complaints to? Bewitching Maiden Ru felt her heart jolt. Facing other men, she was confident that she could twist them around her little finger, and easily play around with them. But Ling Han was different from the rest. It was like his heart was practically forged from iron. If she really slept with him, how could the holy daughter of a mere 3-star force seek justice from the future chairperson of a 4-star force? Seeing Bewitching Maiden Ru was intimidated, Ling Han's heart relaxed. Even he could not help but admit Bewitching Maiden Ru was very captivating, but what could he do when the heavenly phoenix divine maiden allowed her to follow? Husband, you are not only capable of attracting trouble yourself, you can also affect others, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said smilingly. At this time, Liu Feizhang and Zhu Shuiger had both become truly angered as the battle progressed. Both great prodigies were using all their abilities, like two suns at noon. As the Empress watched, her expression was slightly solemn. After a while, she said, these two people are both very strong. If I didn't use any trump cards, I would at most be capable of just fighting them to a tie. Ling Han nodded. Both of them were not just a bit stronger than Zhao Qingfeng. The Empress had not overestimated them, nor was she underplaying her own abilities, but merely stating facts. Furthermore, the Empress had her trump cards, but these two probably had theirs too, right? You should be able to assuredly defeat them, the Empress continued, her tone incredibly certain. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.